At my baby shower, in front of my family, my husband's family, our friends, everyone, my mother-in-law stood up, looked straight at me, and said, "We're getting a paternity test, just to be safe." She said it the same way someone might ask if you wanted another slice of cake, like it was no big deal to question whether the baby growing inside me belonged to her son. Then my husband, the man I had loved, supported, and trusted for 5 years, nodded and added, "Can't hurt." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He said it casually, like we were discussing ordering an Uber. I looked around. Half the room froze. A few people let out awkward laughs, thinking it had to be a joke. My sister's face turned bright red. My mom dropped the plate she was holding. But me? I smiled. I took a deep breath, stood up slowly, and said, "I already did one." The room stilled. "But not for him," I continued. "It's for your dad." You could feel the air get sucked out of the room. Every single person went silent. Then everything exploded. People shouting, crying, chairs scraping. My father-in-law nearly knocked over a table trying to leave. And my husband just stood there, staring at me like I'd turned into a stranger. But I wasn't the one keeping secrets. And this was the part of the story they never saw coming. My name is Leona Hart, and by the time I was 7 months pregnant, I had already decided that my baby's last name might be the only thing I kept from my husband's side of the family. My home was decorated with pink and gold balloons, soft baby blankets, and cupcakes shaped like tiny bottles. I had spent weeks planning my baby shower with my younger sister, Tasha, and for the first time in months, I let myself feel excited. I didn't feel sick or bloated or stressed. I felt hopeful. I stood in front of the mirror in a rose-colored maxi dress, one hand under my belly, smiling. That smile wouldn't survive the afternoon. Tasha poked her head into the room and whistled. "Damn, sis, you don't even look swollen today." I laughed and tossed a pillow at her. "Thanks, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in weeks." She stepped closer, adjusted my necklace, and looked at me carefully. "You ready to see Cynthia?" My stomach dropped. Cynthia Hart, my mother-in-law, had a way of draining joy from a room. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. She never directly insulted me. She didn't need to. She wrapped every dig, every judgment in a polite smile. The first time we met, she looked me up and down and asked whether my parents were in education or entertainment, as if I couldn't possibly have gotten into law school without some kind of shortcut. And yet, here I was, still trying to win over a woman who had never wanted to see me win at all. "I'm not ready," I admitted, "but it's Micah's day." That was our son's name, a name I had chosen, one my husband Evan hadn't even argued over. At the time, I thought it meant he was finally listening. I thought we had finally become a team. The guests started arriving, friends from college, coworkers, cousins, old neighbors. My mom, Janet, was the first through the door, arms full of food, already fussing over centerpieces and trying to feed everyone. She kissed my cheek and whispered, "You look like a goddess." I hugged her tight. "I don't feel like one, but thank you." When Evan's parents arrived, the energy shifted. Walter, my father-in-law, hugged me a little too long, like he always did. He kissed my cheek and lingered, as if he wanted to say something else. He had been sending me messages late at night for months, asking how I was sleeping, how the baby was kicking, whether Evan was treating me well. I used to think he was just kind. Then I started paying attention. Cynthia walked in behind him, carrying a box and wearing that tight-lipped smile. "We brought our own cake," she said. "You know how Evan likes chocolate." She looked me up and down. "You've grown." "I'm pregnant, Cynthia," I replied lightly. "That's kind of how it works." Her smile widened. "Well, not all weight gain is baby-related." I forced a laugh, excused myself, and escaped into the kitchen. Tasha followed close behind. "I swear to God," she muttered, "if she breathes wrong, I'm flipping the buffet table." Please don't, I said. I like the food too much. Despite Cynthia's presence, the party went smoothly at first. There were games and gifts and laughter. For a while, I forgot who was in the room. My best friend made a toast. My aunt cried during the slideshow. Evan rubbed my back while I opened onesies, rattles, and books I'd loved as a child. He looked proud. I looked loved. But underneath it all, something in me stayed tense, like a wire pulled too tight. Cynthia barely spoke to me, but she hovered near Evan, whispering in his ear every chance she got. When I caught his eye, he smiled and brushed it off, but I could tell he was hiding something. It wasn't guilt, it was hesitation. He looked like a man trying not to step on a landmine. I just didn't know which one. At one point, I noticed Walter sitting by himself, watching me. Not Evan, me. His eyes followed my face, my hands, my belly. When I met his gaze, he looked away quickly and adjusted his watch like he hadn't been staring. It was subtle, but my skin crawled. I moved closer to the group. The last game was Guess the Baby Stats, and just before we started, I saw Cynthia lean in and whisper something to Evan again. This time, he nodded. He didn't look happy about it, but he nodded. My mom noticed too. She leaned toward me and asked quietly, "Do you know what that was about?" "No idea," I lied. The truth was, I had a bad feeling. Cynthia never whispered anything good. I expected a passive-aggressive comment, maybe a dig at my parenting before it had even begun. I didn't expect what actually came, but I should have. Because when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And Cynthia had shown me from the very beginning that she didn't see me as a wife, a mother, or even a person worth trusting. She saw me as a threat. And that day, she decided to finally say it out loud. We had just finished the game when Cynthia cleared her throat. She stood at the far end of the living room, a glass of sparkling cider in one hand, tapping her fork against it like she was about to give a wedding toast. I froze. She wasn't smiling. Not the fake smile. Not any smile at all. She looked focused, determined. "I just want to say," she began, "thank you to everyone who came today. It's been enlightening." A few people chuckled awkwardly. Evan's eyes darted to me, then back to her. "But before we all get too carried away," she continued, "Evan and I have talked, and we've decided we're going to get a paternity test, just to be safe." The room went dead quiet. The music was still playing, but softer now, like even the speaker system knew something was wrong. Someone near the back laughed nervously. My cousin coughed. My mom blinked like she hadn't heard correctly. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. It felt like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Cynthia looked directly at me, waiting. Evan finally stepped forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. His voice was gentle, but it landed like a slap. "It can't hurt, babe. Just to shut everyone up, right?" I searched his face for some sign that this wasn't real. For irony, for doubt, for loyalty. There was none. He meant it. I stood up slowly, still silent. Tasha jumped in before I could speak. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "You're really doing this here? At her baby shower?" Cynthia's smile returned, tight and controlled. "We just want to be sure, that's all." She tilted her head slightly. With how fast things moved after the wedding, and with Leona's background, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. My mom stood too, her face flushed. "What background are you referring to?" Cynthia shrugged. "We just want to protect our son. Our family. You can understand that, can't you? The audacity of it, to stand in my house, eat my food, watch me open baby gifts, and accuse me of lying about the father of my child in front of everyone." Evan said nothing else. He stared at the floor like a boy caught between two parents, like he had no agency, no responsibility, like he wasn't the man who helped me build this life. Walter finally spoke. "Cynthia, maybe this isn't the time." She snapped back. "If not now, then when? After she's on the birth certificate? When it's too late?" I looked at Walter. He met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. And that was it. Every person who could have defended me, who should have, stayed quiet. In that moment, the humiliation hurt less than the realization. This wasn't about doubt. It wasn't about the baby. It was about control. This was Cynthia's final test, her way of forcing me to kneel or fight. She wanted me to beg for their trust, but I wasn't going to do either. What she didn't know was that I had seen this coming. A month earlier, after one too many late-night texts from Walter, I started paying attention. One night at 1:14 a.m., he messaged me asking how often Evan had been home. He said he was worried about me being alone. I showed the message to Tasha. She said what I'd been afraid to admit. Something wasn't right. So I did something no one expected. I ordered a discreet at-home DNA testing kit. I swabbed my own cheek, and when Evan fell asleep, I took a swab from him too. I waited. The results came back a week before the baby shower. The first thing I checked was the baby's match against Evan. It was a match. Of course it was. I knew it would be. But part of me needed to see it. Then I did something else. I still had a DNA sample from a family ancestry kit Walter had left at our house over Christmas. He'd bragged about tracing his Scottish roots. I sent that in too, just to answer the question that wouldn't leave me alone. When the results came back, I sealed them in an envelope and slipped it into my purse. I didn't know what I'd do with them. Not yet. But I was ready. So when Cynthia stood there accusing me, and Evan nodded beside her, I realized this was the moment. I could stay quiet and let the shame settle into the room, or I could clear the air with fire. I looked around, at the people who thought they knew me, at the man I married, at the woman who never believed in me. Then I smiled. "I already did a paternity test," I said. Cynthia blinked. "You what?" I stepped forward and pulled the envelope from my purse. "But not for Evan," I said. "I tested the baby against Walter." The room cracked open. The silence didn't even have time to settle before it shattered. But for a brief moment, it was thick enough to choke on. Someone in the back whispered, "What?" like they were hoping they'd misheard me. They hadn't. I lifted my chin and said it again, slower this time, clearer. "I already did a paternity test, but not for Evan. It's for Walter." It felt like ripping the roof off the house. Walter's face drained of color. His glass clinked loudly as he set it down on the table, his hand unsteady. Cynthia's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had nothing to say. Evan looked from me to his father, confusion spreading across his face. My mom gripped the edge of the table like she needed something solid to hold on to. Tasha stepped closer behind me and folded her arms, her presence steady and fierce. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I stood in the center of the room with the envelope in my hand and fire in my chest. I had imagined this moment a dozen times, but I hadn't expected how calm I would feel. Walter finally found his voice. "Leona, what are you saying?" I turned to face him fully. "I'm saying I got tired of being treated like a liar, like an outsider trying to trap Evan or scam this family. I knew someone would bring up a paternity test eventually, so I made sure I was ready." He stared at me, shaking. "You tested me? Without my permission?" "You gave it when you left that DNA kit at my house last December," I said evenly. "You didn't think it mattered then." "I did?" Cynthia slammed her glass onto the table. "This is disgusting. You're out of your mind." I met her eyes. "I'm tired of defending myself. of being picked apart and second-guessed by you. I've been your son's wife for almost 3 years. I've never cheated on him, never lied to him, never given you a reason to doubt me. But you never needed a reason. You just wanted one. Evan finally spoke. Wait, so the test came back negative? What exactly are you saying, Leona? I took a breath and looked at him. I'm saying Walter is not the father of this child. There's a 0% biological match. I never believed he was, but the fact that I even felt the need to test it should tell you something about the pressure your family has put on me. He stared at me like I was speaking another language. You thought my dad might be the father? Why would you even think that? I didn't, I said. But I noticed things. Messages, comments, the way he looked at me. I brought it up to you and you brushed it off. You told me not to cause drama, so I decided to get answers instead of waiting for more accusations. Walter stood up abruptly, his face red. He pointed at me. This is character assassination. I never touched you. I never said you did, I interrupted calmly. But your behavior was inappropriate. You crossed lines. And if I hadn't protected myself, you'd all still be sitting here questioning whether this baby is even Evan's. So I proved it. All of it. Cynthia stepped forward, her voice sharp. You've humiliated this family. No, I said. I gave you exactly what you asked for. The truth. I placed the envelope on the coffee table in front of Evan and stepped back. Read it or don't. It's yours. I'm done explaining myself. The room, once full of noise and celebration, was silent again. People glanced at each other, unsure whether to stay or leave. Tasha leaned in and whispered, You want me to start showing people out? I nodded. Start with Walter. He didn't move at first. He looked at Evan, then at Cynthia, then back at me. You don't belong in this family, he said. I tilted my head. That's funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you. Tasha stepped toward him, and this time Walter turned and walked out without another word. Cynthia followed, furious. Evan remained where he was, staring at the envelope he hadn't opened. I didn't need him to. I already knew what it said. My mom came to my side and took my hand. You didn't have to go through all that, baby. I looked at her. Yes, I did. No one else was going to stand up for me. The guests drifted out slowly after that, voices low, eyes avoiding mine. Tasha started clearing plates in the kitchen, while my mom comforted a shaken family friend who'd witnessed everything. The house still smelled like vanilla cupcakes and fried chicken, but whatever sweetness the day had held was gone. Evan sat on the couch, the envelope still unopened on the table in front of him. He hadn't said a word since his parents left. I stood a few feet away, waiting, but not pleading. I'd already said everything I needed to say. Finally, he spoke. I just don't understand why you had to drag my dad into this, he said quietly. If you knew the baby was mine, why bring him into it? His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It sounded small, confused, like someone realizing too late that the ground under them had been unstable for a long time. Because I saw where this was heading, I said. Your mother has been planting seeds since the moment she found out I was pregnant. I knew a paternity accusation was coming. I just didn't know when. You still could have told me what she was planning. You still could have defended me. But you didn't. That part landed. He looked down, then finally reached for the envelope and opened it. He read the 2 pages slowly, flipping back and forth. The silence stretched. So, Walter really isn't a match, he said at last. No, I replied. No biological relation, not even a sliver. He nodded again. And you really never thought he was the father? I looked at him steadily. Are you asking me that as my husband or as Cynthia's son? He flinched. I just want to understand. I stepped closer. Understand this. Your father sent me messages at 1 in the morning. He asked if you were home. He commented on the timing of my pregnancy. He told me more than once that if I ever needed anything, he'd be there, no matter what you decided. That's not how a father-in-law talks to his pregnant daughter-in-law. That's how a man talks when he thinks he has leverage. Evan swallowed hard and nodded. Okay, I believe you. I didn't respond. Belief wasn't enough anymore. Down the hall, I heard my mom saying goodbye to the last guests. Tasha came in and met my eyes. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. Her look said it all. You did what you had to do. Cynthia never came back inside. She waited outside for Walter, who'd peeled out of the driveway half an hour earlier. I watched her through the window, pacing near the car, shouting into her phone. She didn't look hurt. She looked exposed. And for her, that was far worse. My mom returned and rubbed my back. You did good today. I leaned into her for just a second. I didn't want to ruin the shower. You didn't, she said. You saved your child's future from being surrounded by people who only see suspicion. She was right. That moment hadn't ruined anything. It had revealed everything. The next day, Cynthia sent Evan a long email, accusing me of manipulating the situation, of turning him against his family, of humiliating Walter unfairly. She never mentioned the test results. She never apologized. Evan didn't show me the whole thing, but I saw enough to know accountability wasn't part of her version of the truth. Walter stayed silent. He didn't deny the messages. He didn't explain anything. He just disappeared. Evan later told me his father had gone to stay with a friend. Maybe that was true. Maybe it didn't matter. A few days later, Evan came home early with flowers. He sat me down and said he'd called a therapist, for himself, for us. I need to be better, he said. Not because I messed up once, but because I've let things slide for years. You shouldn't have had to fight alone. I listened. I appreciated it. But I told him trust doesn't come back just because someone apologizes. It comes back when they change. He asked if I still wanted our baby to have his last name. I said yes, but not because of the name. Because I still believed he could become the kind of father who deserved it. Micah was born 3 weeks early, strong, healthy, loud. He had Evan's eyes and my stubborn mouth. He screamed like he had something to say, like he already carried a story of his own. When Cynthia asked to visit us at the hospital, I said, no, not yet. Maybe not ever. She had wanted a test. I gave her the truth. But once it was out in the open, she didn't know what to do with it. The truth didn't just clear my name. It changed everything. It broke what needed to break and made room for something stronger to take its place. The hospital room was quiet when Micah finally fell asleep in my arms. His breathing was soft and steady, his tiny hands curled against my chest. Evan sat nearby, watching us. For the first time in months, there was peace between us. Not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was hidden anymore. There was no pretending. Micah's birth wasn't a reset, it was a mirror. He brought with him a truth we couldn't ignore. We either had to rise to it or fail in front of it. In the weeks that followed, the silence from Cynthia and Walter grew louder than anything they could have said. Cynthia never apologized. She sent a gift, a silver baby rattle engraved with Micah's initials, but no card, no note, no message. I wrapped it in tissue paper and placed it in a drawer, not out of pettiness, because one day Micah should decide what to do with that part of his story. It wasn't mine to erase or rewrite. It was his to understand in his own time. Walter stayed gone. Evan told me his father never denied anything. He didn't explain the messages, the timing, or the tension he'd created. He didn't admit guilt, but he didn't claim innocence either. Evan said that silence told him everything he needed to know. We moved forward carefully. Evan started setting boundaries with his mother for the first time in his life. He canceled their weekly dinners. He stopped answering late-night calls. He told her plainly that until she respected me, she wouldn't have access to Micah. It wasn't easy for him. He'd always been the peacekeeper, the one who swallowed discomfort to avoid conflict. But he finally understood something important. Silence in the face of cruelty isn't neutral. It's permission. And this time, he chose me. Tasha came over often. She helped me finish the nursery, held Micah while I slept, and reminded me again and again that I had done the right thing. My mom became even more protective. She started calling me every morning just to check in, and I welcomed it. After everything I'd been through with Evan's family, I held tighter to the people who loved me without conditions. I didn't forgive Cynthia. Not right away, maybe not ever. But I did stop letting her live in my head. I stopped worrying about what she thought of me or what story she might twist next. She had shown her hand, and the whole family had seen it. Once the truth is out, it's hard to reshape it into something polite. People talked, of course. Cousins called with questions. Friends who'd been at the shower sent long messages. Some were supportive, some were uncomfortable. But none of that mattered as much as the quiet truth I carried now. I had defended myself without cruelty. I had protected my son before he was even born. I had done what too many women are told not to do. I stood up and told the truth, even when it was messy, even when it made people uncomfortable. Evan and I started therapy together. We didn't slip back into old routines or pretend nothing had happened. We talked about trust, loyalty, and how easily fear can pull people apart. Some days were hard. Some nights we sat in silence, unsure what to say. But we kept showing up, and that, more than any apology, gave me hope. When Micah was 2 months old, Evan looked at me across the room and said, "Thank you for not letting them break you." I held our son and answered, "I didn't do it for them. I did it for me, for him, for us." I learned that love isn't passive. It isn't just choosing each other on the good days. It's choosing each other when your family turns on you, when your name is questioned, when a room full of people waits to see if you'll fold under pressure. Love shows up when it's hard, and if it doesn't, then it isn't love, it's convenience. I didn't set out to destroy anything that day. I only wanted to protect what I was building, but sometimes protection looks like confrontation. Sometimes it means exposing cracks so the foundation can finally be rebuilt. To any woman who's been doubted, dismissed, or dragged through someone else's insecurities, let this be your reminder. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't need permission to tell the truth. And when they try to turn your strength into a threat, show them just how dangerous honesty can be. Micah won't remember that baby shower, but one day, when he's old enough to understand, I'll tell him the story, and I'll say, "The day they tried to question your place in this world, I made sure they never did again." If this story made you feel something, anger, strength, clarity, I hope you carry that feeling with you. Too many women are taught to stay quiet, to protect appearances, to keep the peace, to not make waves. But the truth matters, and protecting your peace matters even more. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself in a room full of people who doubted you, drop a speech bubble in the comments and tell your story. Or just say, "I'm here," because you're not alone. If this hit home, like the video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice is powerful. And if you want more real, unfiltered stories that don't shy away from the truth, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time, protect your peace, trust your gut, and never let anyone test your worth.